Hey, welcome aboard for another edition of the A Game. I'm Rabbi Kampora, bunkered down in my little apartment on the Jersey Shore. Over on the other side of the country, somewhere in California, enjoying some downtime, I guess the best way of putting it. But he'll be working very, very soon from what I see. From NHRA, which is on Fox Sports and FX1, it's Louis Bloom, Stat Guy. Thank you so much for being in here and bringing your A Game to me. Thank you, man.
Hey, anytime, Rob. You should probably tell our listeners how our relationship goes back, 40 years? Easy? 50 years?
40, almost, yeah. I mean, I moved in, my family moved in around 1970, and you were also, I think, on the block at that point. So we grew up 2 houses down from each other on River Drive in Marlboro, New Jersey. A little town that at that point was like dirt road, one general store. I mean, if somebody got hurt, it was like the whole community would come together and be like, where's the nearest doctor? It was probably about 8 miles away at least. It was a wild thing to be a part of a new community at that point.
Well, I remember waking up. I used to hear the subway in Brooklyn, and the next day I heard Cows, which was on School Road. It was quite a shock at that point, but good place to grow up. And for a while, we were separated by a guy who had a DeLorean. So
yeah, that's true. This is true.
It was a fun place to grow up. I mean, it's typical suburbia, but it's a good place to grow up. In class of '77, Marlboro High School. Jim Nantz, the most famous member of the class, honestly. But I'm not in his league, but he's
but I think you're in the top 6 now. I was doing a little homework and I was thinking about that. Jim Nantz, obviously from CBS Sports, being probably the most famous person from Marlboro, but then you've got Howie Roseman, who's the general manager of the former Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. He took over the GM spot, led them there. You got Melissa Rauch, who played Bernadette on Big Bang Theory. And then you had 2 other people who kind of were there for a little bit growing up in their childhood, Idina Menzel and Cal Penn. So that makes you the 6th most famous person from Marlboro.
Doesn't matter. I remember hearing Melissa talk about, she was on the TV show talking about going to Delicious Orchards.
Yes.
And I was like, oh man, cider donuts. I'm Jones for one.
Forgive me for interrupting. When was the last time you were back in Jersey? You can get experience.
I was there last Thanksgiving weekend. I came to visit a friend and my family who still live in Marlboro. And I come back. I try to go back. I mean, unfortunately, getting back there now is not as easy, even though I probably could do it. But I'm waiting for that opportunity since I have some free time. And, it's always fun to go back. All my friends live, still in Central Jersey. And, I love Asbury Park and lived there for a long time. Now I live in beautiful downtown Los Angeles.
And with Marlboro, it's funny. When I was posting this on Facebook, I knew at least a couple of people were chiming in like, I went to school with there. I can name check Rick Garino, who is living in Freehold. Yeah. And Rick right away is like, I went to school with him.
Yeah. There's a bunch of drag racers who, I actually run into once in a while. They're like, hey, I grew up in, I was on River Drive, and, people I've known for a long time. And it's kind of random when that happens.
Speaking of racing, is it really been, 50 years ago you went to your first race?
Yeah, it was the first week of May in 1970. It was my 11th birthday. My dad took me to Raceway Park at Englishtown, just a couple miles away. And the only reason why I knew about the racetrack is because I could hear the sound, which if you walked outside on a Wednesday night or Sunday, and it was kind of, a very kind of still night, or not a lot of wind, you would hear the noise just really well. And I'd go play tennis at the swim club, and I'd hear the noise, and I asked my dad, I go, what's that sound? He goes, I think there's a racetrack not far from here. So we went there for my birthday. I always loved cars, which goes back to the '64 World's Fair when I was 5 in Flushing. And, once they had GM had a display, Ford had a display. And I remember just being in the cars and seeing the new cars. And so I was hooked on the car, and then the racing was kind of the next step. And, if I lived maybe in, let's say, Mattawan, I might not have heard the sound. Who knows?
True.
Who knows where my life would go? So thanks to the tennis club on Route 18, there you go.
And your relationship with Raceway Park goes very deep. I mean, you went from a kid in the stands to somebody who was very important in the day-to-day operations of Raceway Park. When did that start?
Well, I first went there in '70, and then winter of 1974, I called the racetrack. Ended up talking to the late Vince Knapp, who was one of the owners of the racetrack, one of the real just incredible people in the sport of drag racing. I talked to him on the phone for like 2 hours, which is unbelievable because he hated to talk on the phone. I found out later. So he kept quizzing me about drag racing. He was like picking my brain. And he goes, how old are you? I said, well, I'm actually 14. I'll be 15 in May. And he goes, I'll never forget this. And this is something that stuck with me for a long time. He goes, how are your grades in English? I'm like, English? I said, I'm completely mediocre in English. He goes, all right. He goes, I'd like to meet you sometime in the next couple months, and maybe I'm going to put you to work. And so he basically met me in March. I think it was March. And then he asked me to come back in about a month. He was going to change personnel in terms of the announcing staff, and he wanted me to be on the public address system. So I didn't aspire to be a drag racing announcer. I just wanted to watch the cars. So I went from being a fan to having basically like the best seat in the house with the microphone. And it took a while to get, proficient at it. I'm not gonna, they gave me like the basics to learn in the beginning, but it was good. I had some good teachers at Raceway Park, people who had been around the sport a long time, and the people who worked at the track were, they're pretty brutal. They didn't let you slide if you made a mistake. They told you, oh, you screwed this up, So it was a good education. But I worked there a long time. And I also worked there during the summer a couple times when I was like the garbage man. I painted the grandstand, I painted the bathrooms. I mean, I used to walk around the pits. You can tell I live in a major city because the police cars are going.
The ambiance.
Yeah. I'm getting used to the sound of helicopters. Let me tell you, I'm pretty much, I've heard a lot of that, and I'm totally, whatever's going on. The protests have been the last couple of days have been really amazing. But So during the summer, I'd walk around the pits. I'd have like a stick, with a spike, and I'd pick up garbage. It was a shopping cart with a garbage basket, and I'd have a big boom box with WNEW FM, because that was the station back then.
It was
Scott Muni, Dave Herman, Vince Scelsa, who one of my idols, in terms of DJs. And I would walk around by myself. I'd wear shorts. I'd have the best tan. I didn't really care back then about the sun. And that was my midweek life, and that's what I did.
And it's grown to this. I mean, did you ever think it was going to become where, okay, I'm on camera, I'm on a national network, and I'm doing what I love to do?
Well, I never would have predicted it would have been my full-time job at a certain point, and that really went from 1974 announcing at the racetrack, and there's some real defining moments that I could really easily point out in my career. Then in 1986, a guy who owned a racetrack in Maryland came up to me at a race. His name was Todd Mack, really amazing guy. He owned a racetrack. He raced cars. And he goes, hey, would you like to come to my track and announce a race? Now, I'd done that. I'd gone to other tracks and kind of announced at other races, but not really for money, like a little bit of money. But this guy offered me like real money. Like, I said, he goes, well, how much would you want? I go, I don't know, $100. He goes, no. He goes, I'll pay you a couple $100. Come down. I'll give you some money for gas. And I had no idea his track was in Budds Creek, Maryland. Now, I had no clue where that was. And this
I was about to ask you,
before GPS. So I drove to Budds Creek, Maryland. I thought it would take like 3 hours. It took like 5 hours because it's south of Washington. It's almost in Virginia.
Okay.
And I worked there in 1986. It was a race that was postponed. It was a NHRA sanctioned event. I got to announce it, and he could not have been nicer to me. So he really is the first person to say, hey, you could really make money at this. Like, you deserve to be paid. Like, Vinny paid me, whatever the going rate was, plus a little bit in terms of minimum wage. Because his theory was, people want to be at the track because they want to be around the cars, the racing. So we're not really here to make money. They're here to just because they love it. This is the first person who said, you can make a living at this. So 1986. And then in the early 90s, NHRA was looking for announcers for the national events, which is the big tours like the traveling drag racing circus. And I had to take a class, which I'd already been announcing for 15, 16 years. And then I'm like, you have to go to school. I'm like, what do I need school for? I've done this forever. And I had to play by the rules, and I understand, that sometimes you got to do that. So I had to take a class. I think it was 1990. They had a class at Raceway Park. And the guy, like the lead announcer's name is Dave McClellan at the time, was the teacher. And he was like, listen, you know what you're doing. He says, there's things that you could get better at, but he was very nice. He's still someone I've talked to, and we actually used him for something last year that was really cool on the TV show. But Dave, basically gave me his blessing, and then in the early '90s, I started working at the races. I go to one event, then I got 2 events, and I got 5, and I got 7, and then in 2001, ESPN took over the TV deal.
Right.
And the guy who basically ran the announcing staff knew that I was really good at like keeping track of things. I kind of knew the stats. And he said, listen, ESPN needs a statistics person. And what we could do is that you and another person can split the season. Half the season you do the stats, the other half you announce the races. And I really wasn't going to give up announcing at that point because I loved it. I still do. And so that's where that was. So I did stats and I did announcing. And then the other guy who did the stats didn't really enjoy it as much as I did, so he kind of backed off of it. And then ESPN came to me and said, listen, we want you to do this pretty much the whole season. And I knew I could make a living from it because, I paid pretty good, working for ESPN. And I didn't give up announcing in Englishtown when we had the race there. I wouldn't give that up for a couple of years because I really loved just doing that race. Right. And eventually things continued. And then in 2007, the producer of the show, his name is Eric Swearingen, and the head producer, Sean Murphy from ESPN, got tired of me going, I could just say this on the air versus telling someone what to say, and it would just be so much better. It would come out better, because having to translate a fact or information to somebody else doesn't always go according to plan. And the play-by-play guy at the time, amazing broadcaster, but I don't think sometimes the little minutia got a little messed up. And it has nothing to do with him. It's just that I had to translate it to him and do it quickly. And sometimes that didn't come across the way it should. So eventually I bugged them enough, and then they finally relented and they gave me a microphone, and that's how I started, talking on the TV show. And that has gone, there's been, years when it's been really good, sometimes not as much. And, it changes. It always changes. Different production companies, different producers, right. And that's right now it's, there's shows that I produce myself where I'm on the air, on the show, I'm the talent. There's right. Stuff on the co-host. There's stuff where I just chime in. I'm always like the replacement guy. If someone doesn't show up or we have a rain out, they'll use me for different things. I'm like the utility infielder in baseball, basically. So
hey, it's got real value. You know that being a good utility guy will get you a long way, no doubt.
Yeah, I could. There's so many jobs at a drag race I could do. In terms of announcing the race, working on the TV show, doing the statistics, I could run the races. I've done that too. I've done many things at the races in different forms, and I still like watching race cars. As long as I like watching race cars, I'm good, and the motorcycles too. But that's really what I'm passionate about. The people I have a lot of good friends who race, people who are associated with the teams, crew chiefs, and 24 weekends a year I get to spend time with those people. A lot of the people I work with are really talented, and people who are really just dedicated to their jobs, and that's exciting too. Plus, it is kind of a kick. I remember the first time we were live on ESPN, and they had the camera on me in the booth. They had like a robotic camera, and and my boss goes, "All right, you're on," and I had to say something in like 30 seconds or whatever, and I was like, just like, can't believe I got through it.
Yeah, exactly. I know the feeling on a smaller level when you do that first break on a new radio station. You're just like, okay, don't stumble. You've got it. Yeah. You can do this. Yeah. No problem.
Yeah. Well, the key thing is that if you do stumble, to keep talking.
Yes, exactly.
That's the most important thing. That's the hard thing to do. And the other thing is having someone in your head talk to you, like hey, throw it to this person, and that actually is I've gotten a lot better at that. I didn't think I could do that at all, but now I'm like, not really a big deal. But it's the real thing that I loved about working, for ESPN, and a little different for the Fox folks, and it's really the show's on Fox. NHRA produces it. It gets put on Fox Sports and Fox. Is that I would help with the promos for the other sports. So anytime there was a Mets promo, I would help, or a Jets promo, and my boss Eric at the time would go like, hey, the promo is this. Do you have any good bits? Do you have any good, information? And I'd look up, try to find some stat or fact so I could chime in. But I've done actual New York Mets promos wearing a Met jersey and a Met hat on ESPN and a Jet shirt. And that, for someone who's a diehard, sports fan, that doesn't get any better. I mean, that was really fun.
I'm sitting here majorly jealous, as you know, suffering Jets-Mets fan here, to the point where I even pulled this out for you for this podcast.
Nice.
Thank you very much.
Nice.
Yes.
I got a couple jerseys in the closet.
I certainly hope so. I mean, there will be at least one Met question before we're done this thing today. But
I'm literally, this is no joke. I could leave my apartment, take a 35-cent bus called the Dash, maybe 5 minutes on the bus,
right,
go to the main train station in downtown LA, Union Station, which is, in movies, TV shows, famous building, and then take the free bus right up to Chavez Ravine. I could get to a Dodger game round trip for really 70 cents.
I hate you for that.
The Dodger Stadium is cool. It really is cool.
That's what I've heard. Apparently, it's a place where you need to experience it at least once. Yeah,
it might not have the like Fenway or obviously Wrigley. I've been to Wrigley. I've never been to Fenway. Right. And I think the new Yankee Stadium is it does nothing for me. I love the old Yankee Stadium. I love Citi Field. I think is fantastic. I love Shake Shack. It's like,
yeah, exactly.
I spent $30 for a cheeseburger, a milkshake, and French fries, but I'm good because Shake Shack is pretty sweet. And I like going to the stadium for the Mets, but Dodger Stadium is the fact that I could literally at 5:30 go, I want to go see a Dodger game. Just hop outside and go and get back and And when I one time the Coca-Cola folks were nice enough to give me tickets for a Dodger, I think it was Dodger Mets game, and so I got the good parking passes, which now getting there was a little bit of a hassle because of the traffic, and LA traffic is exactly what you think it is, just horrific.
Nightmare.
On the way back, the game, the Mets were like clobbering the Dodgers, so most of the Dodger fans left. So I got in my car and I was home in like 7 minutes, just right down the hill. It was great. It was really cool. So that's pretty much the drag racing story. Now the current situation. Hopefully, we'll get back to race in July. That's the plan, and hopefully, I'll be at those events. I might work remote. I'm not sure what's going to happen there, but it's I've been doing it a long time, and I feel like I have the respect of most of the people in the pits, the people who race, the people who are involved in the business. They know that I stick to the facts. I mean, I have opinions about racing, but I really try to stick to the facts about what's going on in the racetrack.
This is Louis Bloom from NHRA. He is on the A game today. Of course, Fox will be picking up the broadcast, as Louis was mentioning. Looks like July. From what I've been able to do on my homework, they're saying like around July 11th or July 12th in Indianapolis is where they're going to start. Then the circuit goes on. And this is the thing that impresses me. You're hitting a lot of the major cities: Indianapolis, Seattle, Denver, Atlanta, St. Louis, Dallas, Vegas. I mean, this is a hell of a circuit that you go on. You get to a lot of great places. I didn't realize it was hitting so many major cities.
Yeah, NHRA is unlike any other form of motorsports, NASCAR, IndyCar in the States. We really have in terms of the map, in terms of reaching all parts of the country, the Northwest, and that's really the big one, is that we go to the Northwest, to Seattle. And it's, I've been to Seattle, 25 times. I just love it up there. And, and a lot of places I've been to 25, 30, 35 times. Vegas I've been to, 40, 50 or times because we raced there twice, and I can drive there just for fun. But I pretty much know all the good restaurants. I know all the good art museums. I know, if there's time to go do something, I've pretty much done it. Houston, for example, I've been to the Museum of Fine Arts at Houston. Like, I remember going to the track, and everybody's like, "What are you doing for dinner?" I'm like, the Museum of Fine Arts has an exhibition of photography from Japan. They're like, "What?" I'm like, "I'm going." I said, "Sorry." And then last year, the Monday after the race, a very nice man, whose name is Joe, I believe his name is Joe, reached out to one of our racers who surfs, and we went tanker surfing, where you surf the wake of a oil tanker or a container ship in Galveston Bay, which is, if you're a surfer, is one of the coolest things you could ever do, because the wave goes on forever. So once you get on it, my friend rode away for easily 3-4 miles. I maybe went like a mile.
Okay.
But it just kept going because the tanker's going and the wave keeps going. It's like a perpetual wave. There's nothing to block it. So that's some of the fun things I get to do. I photographed, and I love photographing, as you know. and I photographed all over the country. And sometimes it's even on the way to the airport. There's a storm or I see something. I always have a camera with me, and it's good. I mean, but ultimately, I love watching race cars going down the racetrack. And the day that stops is the over.
I want to get into your photography, but there's one or two more questions I got as far as NHRA, because thinking back to when I was a kid in the 70s, and we think about some of the names that were just well-known names, Don the Snake Prudhomme, Grumpy Jenkins, Big Daddy Don Garlits. These were the stars of the circuit then. Now the stars now, it's a very different game with the Force family. And her, John Force's daughter in 2017, was that like a major turning point for NHRA at that point?
When Brittany Force won the championship?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd say it was. Women in drag racing, women in NHRA have been successful for years. Shirley Muldowney pretty much led the way, and before her, a woman named Shirley Shahan back in the 1960s, a woman named Barbara Hamilton. I mean, women have won almost 300 times in NHRA. I think I got the numbers right. I think it's like 292 or 295. So women have had huge success. Last year we had multiple women championships. Eric Anderson Pro Stock, Megan Meyer and Alcohol Dragster, one of the it's kind of like the AAA baseball division of drag racing, but it's still very valid, very competitive. And a woman named Allison Dahl from the Northeast won in stock eliminator. So women have had real success. But Brittany's championship was huge because A, she's a member of the Force family, the first family of drag racing. B, we haven't had a woman champion in Top Fuel since Shirley, the only second female to pull that off. And the way it happened, kind of the way it went down, had a lot of drama, so it made it exciting. And Brittany, had a really good sponsor, and she was, her tuner, really the Nitro cars, you could say it's 50-50 driver tuner or 30 driver tuner or tuner driver. It depends on which camp you're in. I have my opinion on that. I'd say it's probably the tuner definitely has a little more of an influence when it comes to a car that has 10, 12,000 horsepower. We say 11, but that's kind of an educated guess. And Alan Johnson, the guy who tuned her car with this guy named Brian Musin, they just the last 6 races, our version of the playoffs, they brought it. And Steve Torrance, the guy who was in the lead, unfortunately wrecked his race car in Dallas, and that kind of changed his momentum there at the end. So that was an exciting finish to a season. And Brittany's she's a champion, and the fact that the funny car team won the championship too. So John Force won both championships that year, which is just stunning.
Another interesting thing about 2017, a turning point in a different way, because I know how much Old Bridge Township Raceway Park means to you. And actually, Christian, there's a photo of me in the garb, if you can pull that up with me in the helmet, because I actually got to do this. And Lewis was one of the first people that responded on Facebook. I had wondered for years what it'd be like. They offered me a chance to be in the car and go down the drag, and I'm going 147 miles an hour. The first second and a half, you're like, ah! And then you're like, wait a minute, I'm flying. It was like the coolest thing ever. I really got it after that point. And yet, on another level with Raceway Park, that season, this is where I throw the stat guy on this as I was doing my homework, the highest rated of the 2017 season on Fox came from the event at Raceway Park, where they had over 1.6 million viewers. So here's a high mark for Raceway, and then it closes. I mean, it had to hurt you on a personal level, and I still can't add it up, and I go, I'm confused, is the best way of putting it.
Well, the ratings, that was an actual exactly what happened. And that happened because, I'll tell you what happened there, is that we were on earlier in the day, then there was a NASCAR race, and then we followed the NASCAR race. So that really helped us. That was the lead-in sometimes in television is almost bigger than the television product itself. True. Because if you have a really good lead-in, that helps you with your numbers. And let's say it's an infomercial about, something, that's not a great lead-in. But when you have the same kind of audience, people who like cars, people who like racing, you're going to do really well. So that's why that was a kind of a home run event for us. That it was like we're only on for like an hour or something after the NASCAR race. We kind of finished the race. And it really, in some ways, maybe was the right way to approach it. It's like, well, how long is your attention span? Is it 3 hours, 2 hours, or 1 hour?
Right.
And can you make a television show that's compelling when you have a lot of things that go on? The actual race on the track only takes a couple minutes because the top fuel and funny cars take less than 4 seconds. The other classes, take 7 seconds or 6 seconds. So when you really add up the actual racing part, it's not that much. So we did really well with those numbers. But the fact that the track closed, it broke my heart. I kind of understand why it closed, some of the reasons why behind the scenes. I'm not going to go into that, but
right, fair enough.
It always comes down to money. Most things. And I remember when it first closed, people were like, well, the people who wanted to stop the track because of the noise finally got their way. Well, that was not the case. That was all resolved, and it's a shame. It's unfortunate. I'm over it now. It took a while. It definitely took a while. And there's many people on Facebook who post. When I go on Facebook, there's like memory. There's like chat. Fans who post pictures from Englishtown, and I look at the pictures. I don't comment usually. I don't try to get involved, but. I see photographs. I'm like, oh yeah, I was at that race, or I remember that race, or old people constantly putting old videos where you can hear me in the background announcing. So it's part of my life. Believe me, if there's any way, shape, or form it'd be a drag strip again, that would be amazing. And for me, I was living in LA. It was a little distant because it wasn't like I could drive there,
right, like
I used to from Asbury or from Marlboro and just ride around and go see my friends who work there. So it was a little distant. But the thing that kind of hurt for me is that a lot of people who raced at Raceway Park only raced because they could race there. They love racing at that track. The good days, the bad days. The owners of the racetrack, they have to make a profit. And regular everyday drag racing for them was probably not as profitable as other things. So that was really kind of the tough thing. So when people say support your local racetrack, that really means a lot because it might not be there. Because the everyday races, the ones that just are the matter of fact Wednesdays, Fridays, Sundays, that's kind of the bread and butter. And if those kind of fall away a little bit, that's where a facility can get hurt in terms of like, is it worth it to put all this effort in to make X amount of dollars when you could do something else to make X plus?
Right.
But it's sad that the people who built cars to race specifically at Raceway Park now have to go have to go to Acco or Island. And there's nothing wrong with those places, but it's not Englishtown. Englishtown, in my opinion, in its day, as good a drag strip there's ever been, and that rivals some of the tracks in Southern California, which are long gone because most of them, disappeared in the 70s and 80s. So, it broke my heart, but I think the fact that I was far away, I was distant, made it a little bit easier.
Lewis Bloom from NHRA is here on the A Game. There's two sides to Lewis's life. One, as you know, is the racing and the cars. The other side, he brought it up a little bit, is his photography. And some of his photos, when you were around the Asbury Park, New Jersey area, you have taken some breathtaking photos. Now, I've tapped into your Instagram page. By the way, that is Lewis1B if you want to follow him on Instagram. We got a few photos. I think you can set up some stories, but I think it breaks down a lot of your passions and also some that you've taken recently.
Sure.
Christian, let's go with photo number 2, and we'll go in order from there. I mean, that Asbury in its heyday, before it became what it is now. And there's nothing wrong with what Asbury is in 2020. It's considered one of the greatest beaches now in the country. But back in the 70s, when you were growing up, here is this. This is and it's a gorgeous photo. I mean, this is not something you would get from, I think, a camera phone. I mean, you still break out the old school, and I can't believe I'm saying it that way, old school Canon or something. Is that what you're using?
Well, I have 2 cameras I shoot with. I have a Canon 5D Mark IV, which is their latest, digital camera. Shoots an incredible photograph. And then I have a camera that I just got the end of last year. It's a Fuji, and it's also digital, but it's made to look like an old school German camera known as a Leica. And it shoots with there's no zoom lens, it's just one lens.
Right.
And unfortunately, when I was doing what I call one of my COVID walks around town, when I'm one of my fellow employees for NHRA lives about 4 blocks away. We'd meet and just walk around, get some exercise because we weren't going anywhere, we weren't traveling, and I unfortunately walked into a concrete wall with it and smashed it up. And the camera, as we speak, is in Edison, New Jersey, getting fixed. It's unfortunately getting fixed, but those are the 2 I shoot with, those 2 digital cameras. And that photograph was most likely shot with a Nikon back in 1977, 78, I would say. And that's the old roller coaster that was on 2nd, right across the street from the Stone Pony. And I don't consider that a great photograph in terms of like art, photography, but it's a good record of what the boardwalk looked like back then.
Right.
And I've been, I realized on April 1st that I have a lot of free time because I was furloughed from my job. I totally understand, the situation. And knock on wood, California unemployment has been a breeze. I know a lot of people have had a lot of issues with trying to get unemployment in different states. I mean, I went online. It was really, I'm blown away by how effortless it was. And I was nervous. Like, what's going to happen? What if it takes a month? And I've been responsible about my money the last couple of years. I've been, I'm 61 years old. I know there's an end game here where I'd like to retire and maybe live someplace different.
Right.
But so I knew on April 1st that I would have some free time that I've never had before. Now I've been photographing for 5 years straight, starting with my move to California at the end of 2015, going into 2016. I've been photographing because California is just an amazing place in terms of scenery. I mean, I love Jersey, but California on its own is like, you drive an hour, you're in the desert. You drive 2 hours, Joshua Tree. You go to the mountains. There's so much of the ocean. So I've been photographing. Plus, I love street photography right here in downtown LA. I just can walk out my door, and it's an amazing place to photograph. There's so much, so many bizarre and beautiful things. So I've been photographing nonstop, but I haven't done. I didn't do anything with the photos. They're just sitting in folders.
Right.
So it took me about a week to realize, well, you're going to have to, finally suck it up. Now, when you have a full-time job, and the full-time job also includes 24, 25 weekends a year, that means you're working like nonstop for days.
Right.
And, I want to go surf. I want to just go outside, sit by the pool. We have a pool upstairs, typical downtown LA building. And so I kind of put off working on the photos. I love the experience of making a photograph is what I enjoy. It's like playing a guitar, you just want to do it, The result is sometimes meaningless, but it's just the process of taking the photograph. I love the experience. Right. So I had all these photographs sitting around, and I've gone through all of them. And that's over 70, 80 folders full of photos. Now I'm still photographing. I was out a couple days ago taking some photographs. I took one out my window that I love, which I think you're going to show everybody.
As a matter of fact, I will. Christian, go to the last photo. I love the angle on this. I think this is the one where I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And this is the black. Yeah, not that one. The black and white one. We'll get to that one later. Go to black and white.
That one's got a good story.
Yeah, and I know it does. I'm kind of like, since we're talking about your neighborhood, there's two black and white ones. Give me both of them back to back if you don't mind, Christian. First one first. Let's start with this one. That's a gorgeous photo, and I love the black and white effect on that. How far was that from your apartment? Because I see 4th Street on there.
Yeah, so I live on between 6th and 7th. So this is what I do. I either walk every day like 5-6 miles with my friend, or I bike. I already rode my bike today, so I'll go out and ride. I ride like 6-8 miles. Sometimes I go to the park. Sometimes I go to the Arts District. But I pretty much do a couple laps of downtown. There's really, they have really good bike lanes. And that photograph was taken with my iPhone, which is an amazing camera, the iPhone 11.
Right.
And that is in the Arts District. And that, that's a mural that I see all the time. And for some reason, because of the woman standing right in the middle of it, I kind of thought, and she had a mask on, which kind of tells the story of what we're living through.
Correct.
I broke out my phone, and then all you got to do is go into the Apple software, and there's black and white choices. You just hit a button on. I didn't go into any other program, and I just did that, and I put it in Instagram. And I pretty much, since I know Photoshop, Instagram's pretty easy. Because it really is like Photoshop, light. But that's with the phone, and that kind of captured the mood of the day. And I'm not sure if I like the people with the dog on the right side of the picture. I wish they weren't in, but I can. And I usually, the thing about Instagram is that, like, photographs are meant to be seen on a wall, like big, like like the ones here. My photo, a Mark Weiss photo of the Ramones from probably like CBGB's, taken in 1981.
Nice.
Which Mark was nice enough to give me a print of that, which I love, and I love the Ramones. We can talk about your how much I love the radio station you worked for a couple of years. 106 was the best.
Great time.
Yeah. So the iPhone. So when I put pictures on Instagram, it took me a long time to resist putting my actual real photos, which means photos taken with a camera that you can make a 30 by 40 print from. You know, the iPhone, you can make an 8 by 10 print and it looks pretty good.
Right.
And it took me a while to get used to saying, okay, I can put the photos that I really would want to show people on a bigger scale. And in the next couple weeks, I'm going to redo my website, which is the whole purpose of all the editing, was to redo my website, which is, I think, a little dated. It hasn't really been really updated the way it should be in a couple of years. So that process is taking place as we speak. And hopefully I'll put that on Instagram, you know, my new website, and people will be able to buy prints right off the website if you want to buy a photograph of Asbury, some of the music photos, you know, anything. So, so that photos, that's from the bike ride. That's, you know, just riding my bike.
Now, Christian, the other black and white one, which is the angle. This is a great angle. So how far up are you from where the demonstration was happening?
Well, I'm on the 6th floor of my building.
Okay.
And so I'm pretty much, I think I'm about 7 floors up when you really count the way the building is, because the floors are huge. My I'm like 12, 14 foot ceilings. So I'm pretty far up. And I was talking to my niece on the phone. We were FaceTiming. She's in Marlboro. And I said, oh, you know, I heard some noise, and I was like, oh, I think they're actually marching right behind my building. And I looked out, and there was thousands of people. And and she said to me, she goes, well, are you going to take any photos? I said, with the phone? She goes, no, like maybe with your real camera. I'm like, okay. So I actually, you know, brought, you know, the camera's always ready. And I took maybe 12 or 14 exposures, and this one I really like. And I made a beautiful print of it. So it kind of tells a story, you know, all different people. And they were very, they were engaging the people in the building, which I really like, because you could see them, like people in the building were responding. And actually, I did this earlier today because I was, there you go. That's the
oh
print.
yeah, that is beautiful.
It's beautiful. It came out
like you said, it tells the story, and I love the angle of it, because there's been photos that have been coming out about some of these things. You don't get that angle, and there you are, 7 floors up, and you really can get a view and a story that's a little different than what you're seeing on television through that photo. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, it's one of my friends who I work with has been, you know, she's been out, you know, she's more of a videographer, but she's been shooting, and she's taken some beautiful photographs, and you know, and I've watched a lot of the marches, you know, protests, and there's a lot of people taking photographs. And other than participating in the message, I've kind of thought, you know, I don't really need to kind of add to the photo part of it, because, you know, is it something that is really what I do? Right. You know, I'm not really a journalist in terms of photography. I just photograph things I see, you know, have an emotional response to. But I thought that, you know, if I have one photograph from you know, the protest, you know, Black Lives Matter protest, that pretty much says it all. So it kind of works. And I'm kind of a wuss too, in terms of, you know, there is still a pandemic, you know, COVID-19. You cannot ignore that, and you know, being amongst thousands of people in a tight group kind of freaks me out a little bit. But I'm, you know, I'm all in terms of the message.
Well, let's go back to a time where there was a crowd. Now, Christian, the celebrity that you had popped in a little bit. So we'll go back to the Stone Pony days. So back to Asbury Park. I mean, this is a classic photo. I mean, what you got here is just amazing. Give me a background of what the story was with this.
Well, Bruce would show up with sometimes with the band, mostly by himself at the Stone Pony. The first time I ever saw him play in person was 1977. I actually got into, you know, most people get into Bruce, they get into Bruce because of Bruce, but I actually like Southside Johnny in 1976, around there. Maybe when they put out their first album, This Time It's For Real. And so I heard Southside Johnny's album. One of my friends, Dave Postal, who lived on the other side of Marlboro, you know, lived in the development, but he lived on the other side of School Road. He came over with the Southside Johnny album. My dad had a really good stereo. So we're listening to the album, and I'm reading the liner notes, and it's like Steve Van Zandt, Bruce Springsteen, you know, so, you know, like they wrote some of the songs. I'm like, wow, I got to check out this Bruce Springsteen guy. So I'm sure I heard Born to Run on the radio, but it never really kind of grabbed me. So so I went from Southside Johnny, who I still love the music, you know, and think he's a great performer, great singer, to basically becoming a Bruce fan. And then the first time I saw him play was in the Pony in '77. He jumped on stage with a band called Shots, which a guy named Tony Palagrossi was the trumpet player and founder of Carlo Novi. A lot of people on the Jersey Shore know Tony. He's a great guy, been a good friend for a long time. And
Absolutely.
I believe I photographed him in the band, and one of his shots playing trumpet is like one of his favorite photographs of all time. So I always like when he tells me that. But so for years I'd go to the Pony all the time, hoping Bruce would show up, hope he play. I met my ex-wife looking for Bruce at the Pony, so that's kind of funny. So that shot is from 1987, I'm pretty sure. He showed up with the band. And what I love about that shot, he's looking right at me. He gave me a big smile. And I talked to Bruce for years. Like, he knew my name for a long time, And then he showed up at Raceway Park with his kids and his family. And I'd go up and say hello to him. I always try to – I really don't go out of my way to make contact with him, like when I know he's around, because I really don't want to bother him. But at the Pony and some of the other bars, it became – he saw me and my friends all the time. We were out basically stalking him constantly. Like Friday night, he'd play at Big Man's West or something. He'd play with Beaver Brown, John Cafferty's band.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Saturday, he'd play again with them. Sunday, he played with Clarence's band, the Red Bank Rockers. He'd do like 2 songs. And then, this is in Red Bank, he'd go from Red Bank, his car is parked on, I believe, Oakland, right behind whatever street it is, Monmouth. Okay. And then he'd drive to the Pony at like 1:30 in the morning to play with cats. and maybe about 10 of us knew this was going on. And we and it was really my job for a couple of years. And it was a lot of fun. So that picture's from '87. And what I love about that photo is I kind of pretty much, now Deborah Rothenberg is in front of me. And she's not as tall as I am, Deborah. She's a nice, let's say 5'2", maybe, something like that.
About that, and a very talented photographer in her own right. Yes.
Deborah is a great photographer. She's been a good friend for a long time. She actually thanked me in her book, which I thought was really sweet, because I met her a long time ago. So that's Deborah's white card to bounce her flash into. So I always thought, and the reason why I posted it is because I wanted to show people like how I almost got like the perfect shot.
Right.
But it's not that thing in the white card. And then I tagged Deborah, and she goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I go, "It's not if I would held my camera up another 3 inches, I would have nailed it." But I have a lot of, on my website, which is lewisbloomPhoto.com, I have a lot of kind of vintage Bruce photos. I've been lucky enough to people for use them for books and different things. And it's kind of funny when someone will call like, "Hey, I heard you have really good pictures of the Shakes." I'm like, "Where'd you get my number from?" Like bands that and what I really need to do, and I really should do this, is I have thousands of negatives. And what's great about photography is that, if it's shot on film and there's a contact sheet and the negatives, it's still as good as the day you developed it in my darkroom on 34 River Drive. It's not changed. So, but my view in terms of what I believe about the photographs and way I see things is definitely different. So I can go back and look at things and go, wow, this is actually a lot better than I thought, because my sense of what I like has changed. My aesthetic has changed. Right. So probably another 20, 30 really beautiful music photos that people would love to see that are buried. And that's a project that I'll be working on eventually. Going through some, and even the old Asbury pictures. I pretty much picked the cream of the crop, but I know there's ones that maybe now, because of my sense has changed, that I think people. It's like the one of the shot of the roller coaster with the ride in front of it.
Yeah, and this is the other great shot, and this was from the Superstorm. This is your shot of it, and when you were taking this, what is going through your mind? Because again, what with everything that was going on during the Superstorm, I mean, it was just a horrifying time for everybody on the Jersey Shore,
Oh yeah. Well, I was actually at a race in Las Vegas when the storm hit, and I lived on Deal Lake in an apartment building, and I was concerned about my car. I was concerned about the people my friends, my property. What if the windows blew out and all my stuff got ruined? But I was in Vegas, and I could not get home. Now the storm, I think, hit on a Saturday or Sunday. I couldn't get home till Wednesday. I flew the red eye. They finally said Newark was open. They reopened Newark Airport.
Right.
So I flew home. I got home on this is actually pretty funny, and it relates to Bruce too, because something happened that day, which is kind of cool. So I flew home. I got home Thursday morning. Now I drove my car from the airport, and when I got to the shore, when I got to Oakhurst and Deal, because I would drive through 35 to get to Asbury that way, and I started seeing trees and just destruction. And then you couldn't even get to the beach. The beach was closed. They wouldn't let you drive on Ocean Avenue basically at that point. Yeah. And I went to my apartment, and I'm in my apartment, and I'm like, okay, everything's good, and there's no water damage. Everything looks fine. I'm really lucky because people's houses, their lives were completely destroyed. People died. It was horrible. But I remember going, okay, well, there's no heat, there's no electricity. It's beginning in November, so it's kind of chilly. So I'm like, wow, what do I. But I also that day had tickets for a Bruce Springsteen show in State College, Pennsylvania.
Oh, jeez.
So that was so I took the red eye from Vegas, got home. I slept maybe an hour, got home. All right. I couldn't even take a shower. I'd already been up for 24 hours basically. Right. And then I drove to State College. Now, luckily, this is the most amazing thing of all. For someone who never had gas, I would always my cars were always empty. I always just get gas when I need them. I had almost a full tank of gas in my one car. So lucky for me, I had enough gas to get out of New Jersey because every gas station, most of them were closed, and the ones that were open had lines that took forever.
Right.
So I drove to State College. Eventually, as soon as I got to Pennsylvania, I waited maybe about 40 minutes in Pennsylvania, and I started buying gas again, just so I always knew no matter what, I'd have a full tank. And I went to see Bruce play the E Street Band at State College, which is Penn State, right? Isn't that State College?
Yeah, that is Penn State. Yes.
Yeah, Penn State. And that was my first unofficial date with my current girlfriend, who I've had for almost 8 years. Because we met at a Springsteen show in Charlottesville, and she's from Germany. She flew in from Germany. She's a flight attendant. Wow. And now she's retired. So we met at that show. I did the old. She's like, I heard her talking. I said, "Where are you from?" She goes, "Oh, I'm from Germany." I said, "Oh." She's like, "Where are you from?" I'm from Asbury Park. And because at a Bruce show, that's that's gold.
Of course.
and so that was our first kind of date. It was at State College. So I showed up. I hadn't taken a shower. I was wearing glasses. My hair was a mess. I was wearing a baseball cap. And that's the first time we hung out. And I had a ticket. She had a ticket for the pit. She had a GA, and I had a seat way in the back. And before the show started, she called me on my phone. She goes, "Hey, where are you?" I said, "I'm in my seat." She goes, "Meet me over here. I got something for you." And for some reason, she knew someone, and she got me a wristband, so I got in the pit. And
nice.
that was good. Anytime you're in the pit at a Bruce show, that's a big deal. So and I love a lot. I love Bruce, but I do love a lot. Now, my new favorite band, I got to tell you this. I'm going to just change this real quick.
No, go right ahead.
My new favorite band is called the Fontaines DC. I don't know if you've heard of them.
No, you got me on this one.
Fontaines.
I know.
It's like I think they're from Ireland, from Europe. It's kind of like if the Ramones and the Clash and maybe somebody else had a baby. It's really cool. It sounds like nothing else. It's really good. And I heard it on my local. There's you could stream. I listen to radio from all over the world now.
Yeah,
but
of course.
There's a station here in Santa Monica, 88.5. That is fantastic. It's like Brookdale, but I think a little more energy. Brookdale sometimes is a little too mellow for me. And so I heard that song. I heard a song. I was like, what is that? And then I could see in the box where you stream. Right. It said Fontaines DC, so I got Apple Music, which is the best investment ever, and I quickly went in there and got their first album, and I dig it. So that's my new thing for the moment, and that could change tomorrow because
right.
So let me talk about. So I haven't really finished the photo story. So what happened was I saw really amazing photographs of the roller coaster. People, a guy in a helicopter shot it. It's hard to beat a helicopter. You get a view that nobody else does. So I really had kind of given up on going down there. First of all, you couldn't really get there for a while because it was kind of blocked off. They didn't want people showing up and playing tourists. So what happened is February of the next year. So this is from November to February. I had heard they were going to take it out. They were going to take it down and clean up the roller coaster. So
Right.
I finally decide I don't like getting up early, but some days you got to do it. So I got up at like 4:30. I drove to Seaside, in pitch black, and I was there at sunrise, which is the right way to photograph it because the sun comes up behind it. And what I talked about before, so I had found I shot a couple hundred pictures of the roller coaster at sunrise, and I had found a couple photos I really liked. That wasn't one of them. So when I went back through this whole process of re-looking at the work, I kind of saw that one. I said, that's really it. That's the shot. And I have one, the one I have on my website now. You could see the boardwalk and then the roller coaster, because I wanted people to have a sense of perspective of where it was, not just a random roller coaster in the ocean. So I like both images because one tells a different story. But that one is one of those photos that, because I've done this process of re-editing and now when I look at my work, I go, oh, I really like this. I didn't like this 5 years ago because I'm a different person in terms of my aesthetic. That's changed. I mean, I still love the same photographs from 50 years ago that I saw in, photographs that I loved when I was a kid. But now going back, that made a big difference that I saw that image and I really loved it. And I put it on Instagram and people just really responded to it. So that was kind of.
And his Instagram page, again, is Lewis1B. Go ahead and follow him. A lot of great photographs to check out. As I'm getting ready to wrap up here, as a Mets fan and fellow Mets fan, I wrote this down here. I'm curious what you would think, but I'll show you what I came up with.
Okay.
Mount Rushmore of the New York Mets. Pick your four. Who's on the Mount Rushmore?
Seaver, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Seaver, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Jacob deGrom, I think, is a total stud.
Mm-hmm.
Probably Keith Hernandez and Mike Piazza. I'm sure, Gary Carter. I mean, it's tough. It's really tough.
3 out of 4, if you can see these names. That's what I wrote down before the interview.
Wow. So David Wright. Now, who did I pick that? Seaver.
You went with Piazza, which is a good choice. You can't go wrong with that. So that's a point.
David Wright, I think for me, in terms of being, the spiritual part of being a Mets fan, he's got it. Like he is a Met fan, like right here. A Met. He's a Met. But in terms of his career, I still think he didn't achieve what he could have achieved. I mean, he was great, but he didn't go to that kind of the next level.
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Piazza, I think without Piazza, you don't win. You're missing a lot there without Piazza.
Yeah, that 88, the 98 to 2001 era, definitely. Yeah.
And deGrom, I mean, he's amazing, absolutely amazing. I mean, and I love Gooden. When he was, I absolutely thought Gooden was like, I would not miss him pitching. Darryl Strawberry. I remember, if I was going to go out to dinner and Strawberry was coming up next inning, I wouldn't wait. I could see him get up. He could hit the ball, 700 feet.
Right.
So I miss baseball a lot. What's really fun is the guys from Fox, who actually are the Fox people, who are the representative that we deal with NHRA. They're sports guys, and one of them is grew up in New Brunswick, in South Brunswick maybe, but he grew up in the Brunswick area, and he was not a Met fan, but he was a Met fan when he was a kid, but he moved to Pittsburgh. Is more like a Pirate. But we talk about the Mets all the time, and he always sends me old videos and stuff from one of the other producers. So it's good that baseball. And I met some famous athletes at the drag races. We'll get them. They'll come out to watch football players. But the best one is Randy Johnson, the big unit.
Oh yeah, nice.
He's been to a couple of our races. The first time I talked to him, he wouldn't give me the time of day. The second time I talked to him, wouldn't give me the time of day because he's there to have fun. He doesn't want to be bothered.
Okay.
The third time, I found a way to get to him a little bit. He was looking at his photographs on his laptop in a press room, and he was really, my photos are terrible, blah, blah, blah. And I kept hearing him. He was complaining out loud. I'm like, dude, like, how bad could they be? Let me see. And he goes, like, what do you know? I go, well, I'm a photographer, and I know everything about drag racing. So I look at his photos, and they were really kind of cool because they were not like the typical drag racing photos. He made some mistakes, but the mistakes kind of actually look good. The things are a little more blurry than he wanted. Right. And then we started talking about photography, and he goes, I really love, Safari. He goes on Safari. He's the guy's worth millions, and he loves shooting concerts. I said, oh, funny you say that. So I have on my phone, I have my entire photo collection, like most people. And I showed him the picture of Bruce I took in 77 at the Pony. And so finally I broke the ice. And then we were hanging out talking, and he goes, so are you into baseball? I said, diehard Met fan. So I talked to him about, this is a couple years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago. I talked to him about Syndergaard, DeGrom, and Harvey. Matt Harvey was pitching back then.
Right.
And I was talking to Randy Johnson about pitching. That was pretty cool. And the next couple times I saw him, he still tortured me, but he was in a friendly way. He's like, you're here? What are you doing here? I was in an IndyCar race. I saw him. He's like, what are you doing here? Come on, man. So, and it's been fun. You know, photography's been a great career, and drag racing has been great. And we'll see how much more I have, and then it's hang out with my girlfriend and do other stuff.
Good stuff. Thank you for the time. Let me remind you, the NHRA season will start up again in July. Look for it on Fox and FS1 and Lewis 1B on Instagram. The website again, when people want to visit, when you have it up to date, will be. It's
lewisbloomphoto.com. And what I'll do is on Instagram, when I update it, I'll make sure everybody knows, and I'll make sure it's, easy to find. And, hopefully people enjoy my work. And if you want to look at Asbury from 30 years ago, 40 years ago, if you want to see some, Elvis Costello, David Johansen, obviously Southside Johnny, Bruce Springsteen, all different photos. B.B. King and Red Bank, I photographed them. And Mark Weiss, really, Mark Weiss in 1990, around there, called me. He said, hey, are you into this alternative stuff? Now, Mark's a metal guy,
right.
Twisted Sister, Ozzy, that's his thing. No matter what he says, that's what he likes. So he asked me, he goes, would you like to go photograph some of these bands, like some of these alternative bands, like, Lollapalooza, and all these different shows. So I got to do that courtesy of Mark, and I got to take some really, some new photos. I did it for about a year. And the best one, Ned's Atomic Dustbin.
Oh, God.
Seeing them was fantastic. I love that. It's good.
Again, a band that I remember dearly in my heart in the 90s, for sure.
Absolutely.
Lewis Bloom, thank you so much. Thank you for this. This was a lot of fun. We'll have to do it again at some point in the future. Have a good rest of the summer. Look forward to seeing you back on television. Well, let's hope that's the case, and let's hope everybody has a safe couple months and some things get figured out. And hey, we're all in it together, right? Well said, my friend. That's it for the A Game this week. Join me again next Monday when we do this whole thing again. Until then, have a great week ahead. Take care.